Maya Zlatanova from Find Me Cure and Product Mastermind at Trial Hub. Uh, so, Maya, thank you so much. You were just, and guys, the live stream, ask us anything. You see on the bottom? This is true. You can do this. Ask us anything. We'll feature your question. Maya, what did
Hi,
you.
Dan.
Hi, first of all. Hi, Maya.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Dan. Thanks
Very
for having
important,
me here.
first of all, to say hi. But we've been talking behind the scenes, and but we got so
True.
excited we have to go live. You what say what you said in German and then explain in English.
Yes, so there is a very like famous wording in German, Übung macht den Meister, which means that, well, I'll try to explain literally. You become a king when you do the exercise. When you exercise, you become the king, basically. So, yeah, we were discussing with you, Dan, how important it is to prepare yourself for whatever, like for the interview, for meeting with someone, for whatever. So preparation is always, it's never underestimated. um, but I was actually arguing with you on a different thing, because you were saying basically that if you are applying for a job in the clinical research space, and if you're new to the space, you must know all the terms around the centralized clinical trials and patient centricity. And I agree with you, but then I would say also it depends,
Of course.
because if I'm new to clinical research, and actually I'm a very good example, because I have no, when I started in clinical research, that was like maybe like 15 years ago, I had absolutely no preparation. Of course, my role was completely different, but for example, if I am doing the interview with someone new from the clinical research space, what I will be looking to see in such a person, especially if they're facing patients, working with patients at the site, patient coordinators, is not whether they know what the centralized clinical trial is or what even clinical trial is, maybe a little bit, but how they actually communicate with people. Are they empathetic? Do they care about people, and like what's their level of communication? These sort of things, like the soft skills. So it depends on what exactly you're going to do at your work.
I agree 100%. I'm the soft skills king. I tell people all the time, you guys, of course, you need to do soft skills. All that stuff is extremely important. But, but, and this is where I'm not going to try to say what you said in German, but I agree with this. She or he who does the exercise is king. Okay, why? Because I think I don't think you must know these things. I think you better get to learning about these things.
Mm,
You best to get to learning, guys, because this stuff, first of all, information has never been easier to attain. Okay, this is where it's commoditized now. It used to be you have to pay somebody to go into a webinar, a couple
mm,
$100, and then they're going to educate you on patient centricity or decentralized trial. Now, you go on LinkedIn Live, you go on Clubhouse, you go wherever you go on YouTube, it's free. This stuff
mm.
is, information flows freely. So, why not learn about these things? In addition to soft, of course, you gotta have soft skills. I mean, absolutely. But to separate yourself when you don't have the experience and you're competing against people that do, if you have better soft skills, you have a better chance. And if you demonstrate that you are at least aware of the topics in the industry,
Mm.
you're positioning yourself a little bit better. Your odds are still against you because they're most likely going to go with experience. Let's be real, Maya. Most likely they're going to go with experience, but don't you want a fighter's chance? You know, in boxing they call this the puncher's chance. The other guy can outbox you, but if you're a puncher, you still have a chance. You catch the other guy sleeping with like an
Yeah.
uppercut, you've got a puncher's chance. Okay, so this is what I guess this is the analogy. It's not as elegant as your German, but it's still it's still
That's a good way to describe German language, you know. I like you even better, but my friends would disagree. Like, okay, but I think it's elegant as well. Well, here's the thing, Dan. I was reading, so I read a couple of books at the same time at the moment, and it's very related to this topic.
Mhm.
One of the book is called The Range, and it's about the fact that like our educational system produces a lot of specialists.
Ah,
And actually, the reality is the world needs more generalists, because generalists actually,
wow.
yes, they would actually see things from different perspective. So I agree with you that you need to have some preparation in education, but you shouldn't be really like the expert in the centralized clinical trials to go and appear on the interview and then shine, because actually your experience in other areas might make you even more valuable. Because like imagine if you are someone coming from the consumer business, for example, and suddenly you want to work with patients, or you want to work in clinical trials because you think that clinical trials like support patients. Like this consumer background might help you so much in bringing new future for clinical trials as well. So yes, preparation, yes, but not because some people understand preparation as being like, you know, perfectionist. I need to know everything, and I have to be super prepared before going and applying for a job. And you don't have to. Actually, you need to know, you need to show that you can do your homework and that you're learning and you're really interested in the space, but doesn't mean that you have to be an expert.
Right. I think that's a good point because, and I'm glad you brought that up because I don't want people to misconstrue what I said. So I don't suggest you pretend to be an expert when you're obviously not. Just learn the concepts, learn the topics, at least learn what's popular in the industry, and then provide your authentic solution to the problem. Because you're right, Maya, if you go like too much to try to be a know-it-all, they're gonna know immediately this person's just read, she just watched like a LinkedIn live of some guy on YouTube, and that's it. She's just regurgitating what he said. So that's you're exactly right. I think we're both saying the same thing from different angle. But you're absolutely right. Somebody when you were saying that from other industries, somebody came to mind. One of my Patreon members, Ronik. He's helps sites now. He actually looks to acquire sites and take them over. But he's coming to clinical research from the from the hospitality industry. So
Hmm.
hotel owner, hotel management, and he's
Great.
looking at patient centricity. Like one of the things I want to talk with you about from that perspective, not from the perspective of pharma, right? Because
Even
what
better.
what have we seen patients for the longest time in research, and it's not a good thing to see them, but we see them as subjects. And he's coming from hospitality. No, these are people. They need to be comfortable. They need to have customer service, all this
Customer
kind of
is the
stuff.
king. And
Exact.
like in this
That's
case, customer
that's
is the king. Exactly.
exactly right. So what do you think about this? This is exactly what you're saying too.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. And, you know, it's a shame. I think, you know, there are a lot of things that happened in the last few years in the clinical research space, which I think are kind of positioning the industry in much better position than it was before that. And I'll tell you what actually happens. Obviously, COVID is one of the things, and like COVID accelerated a lot of the processes that started before that. But actually, before that, what we've seen is that a lot of people from outside of the industry started joining the industry. A lot of people from the IT industry. If you see it like clinical research organizations, you see their heads, and not just like clinical research organizations, but also pharma. You see a lot of IT people joining this industry because the pharma and clinical research realized, have a look at these IT giants, like how they scale, how they grow. Like it's incredible. Imagine we can bring that to our high margin type of industry and basically do that here as well. And so by these people coming to the industry, They brought different mentality and different culture. And actually, that's exactly what we need, a different way of thinking. The moment you start thinking about operations, regulations, compliance, all these stuff, they are super important. Don't get me wrong. They are important, but they bring you in a funnel where you kind of stop seeing what happens outside of it, what
Yeah.
happens with patients, what happens with sites, what happens with stuff at the site also. Someone told me recently, I think it was, yeah, my friend Edie, actually, you mentioned the webinar that we had with
Yeah.
some folks, and Edie from First Class Solutions, she told me, and I don't remember the numbers, but they were ridiculous. She was quoting numbers actually around how much study coordinators quit their job, and it was the rate was
Yeah.
times more than people from McDonald's, for example. Can you imagine that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I know that this and CRAs even more,
yeah,
and
so
CRAs
that's
get
why I
paid
think,
more, and they have
well,
way more
yes.
turnover.
Yes, exactly. So I really think if we are to bring more people from outside of the industry, not just them, but combine them with real experts from the industry and mix these perspectives, I'm pretty sure that that will contribute to patient centricity, because real patient centricity is actually consumer centricity.
Mm.
And we know, like from other industries, that there are so great examples like the Amazons, Google, and so on and so forth, where you really feel a little bit like locked in their services without even knowing. So
Right.
how come it's possible there and it's not possible here?
Uh, yes, they're exactly right. There's a guy there's a person I follow, Jordan Peterson. He's a
Of course,
psychologist.
yeah.
All right, he talks about the balance of order and chaos. And I think in pharma we've had like for decades too much order, and that's
Mm.
just as bad as too much chaos. The problems are different, they manifest themselves differently. But I think and I hope what we're starting to see is a little bit of chaos entering our space in a good way. I mean,
Hmm.
what's decentralized trial? It's a little trying to introduce a little bit of chaos to the hierarchies that exist, right, in the frameworks of traditional pharma. And same thing a little bit with virtual trial, patient centricity. I mean, pharma, this is an industry that tries to control everything, micromanage everything, and it stifles innovation. I actually argue that the big CROs are the biggest hindrance towards innovations. They even hinder innovation more than pharma because they've created a business model where they don't basically have a reward if a trial runs more efficient. Matter of fact, they get paid more if a trial is not efficient because the study takes longer and they could bill more. And so, it's this push between now pharma is actually trying to be more chaotic than these big CROs.
Well, I can't really agree with you here because I work a lot with clinical research organizations, and um, the thing is that it's not their business model is no longer like really. I mean, they also have to deliver. It's their credibility.
Yeah.
The more, the better results they have, the better credibility, the more clients, the more clinical trials they're going to have. So that's super important for them as well. And I don't think that their business model is such that if they fail, they get rewarded. I mean, fail, like meaning that the clinical trial goes for more time, basically, like gets delayed. There are like ways that you can avoid that with like bonuses or percentages that being cut, penalties, so stuff like that also exist and prevent from this business model. It used to be the case, maybe with the business model around the booster visits,
Yeah.
where it was believed that, and maybe it wasn't like for a purpose, but I'm just saying that these booster visits, it was believed that if you have more visits to the site, then that will boost patient recruitment. And maybe in some cases that's exactly happening, because it's, let's say, the site is really kind of not really engaged with the
Right.
clinical trial for some reasons. But in reality, that's not really like, in most cases, that's not the reason for patient recruitment being a challenge, and it's
Right.
something
Right.
something different.
Right, right. Yeah, I'm more speaking to the effect of sites being able to be, more creative and kind of do things how they want, because I work at the site level, and whenever we come up with some kind of strategy and there's a CRO, and by the way, the main incentive for CRO right now is, well, there's like 5 major CROs. And so if
Mm,
we don't do well, the sponsors are going to take the study away from us, which is happening right now to a really big CRO that I know. It's actually a problem with them. They're getting a lot of studies
mm,
removed because of poor quality, CRA
yeah.
turnover, all this kind of stuff's connected. It's not so simple like black and white like this. But the sites usually ask the CRO, hey, can we do this way? And usually the CRO says no, and then they blame the sponsor. It's very common.
Yeah,
But it's
yeah,
not the
yeah.
sponsor, because when you go ask
The
the
good and
sponsor,
the
they
bad
say, "No,
cup.
what are you talking about?" Could be good, bad cop.
Yeah.
Could be good, bad cop. Kevin O'Brien, thank you for the comments. Plus Farm is trying to digitize. It was a development objective I had as an R&D sourcing manager. Yeah, everything's getting digital.
Right.
Digital revolution. So what are you doing, Maya, with your companies?
So we first started to digitalize the way people are searching for clinical trials. And I think I mentioned it's kind of a personal story. I just saw firsthand how difficult it is to find information about clinical trials. And I realized it's not just finding the information, but also how do you use this information for your benefit, for the sake of you being a part of a clinical trial. So with my co-founders, we decided that there must be a better way. We need to kind of find a way to simplify this process, and it's all about how do you simplify clinical trials language, let's put it that way, but also improve the steps afterwards. How do you get education around clinical trials, but then which clinical trial is really good fit for you, which are the sites, like hospitals behind these clinical trial, am I eligible for that, and so on and so forth. And we took a pretty long journey in automating all of these steps. So even up to today, like today, as of today, we help patients doing that. But then a few years ago, we found out that by doing that, we're kind of like stepping into a new niche. For us, it was new, which is patient recruitment. And we were kind of like approached by sponsors and CROs to see what we are doing in the patient recruitment space. And once we found out about the actual problems in patient recruitment, we just knew that it's not just about like raising awareness among patients. It's not about just the needs of patients. Needs exist. As long as there are patients, there are also pains and needs of these patients. And clinical trials are yet another alternative. That's it. But then we realized that patient recruitment suffers from other factors that usually come with the clinical trial strategy. So now we try to kind of simplify the way you gather data, the way you analyze this data, the way you plan your clinical trials, to make it simpler for teams, because it
Mm,
turned out that it's not so simple as it sounds. It's like,
I see.
the clinical trial has so many variables. And what actually concerned me back then when we started working on Trial Hub, that's the name of the product. What really concerned me is that the one thing that usually gets neglected is the patient's pathway. And actually, that's one of the number one things. Of course, schedule of the protocol and other things, but the patient pathway is the number one thing that's being neglected, and also
Like the
the number
patient
one
journey,
reason.
right? Is that the patient
Patient
journey?
journey, yes, the pathway, the standard of care in a given
Okay.
country. And that's maybe the number one reason why patient recruitment gets well or doesn't go well.
I see.
And yeah, and it's complicated actually
Of
because
course.
yes.
It's a multi-billion dollar problem that no one, by the way, nobody in I've been in this industry since 2005. I'm aware that the industry existed before I became involved. But from when I started, this has been a problem, and there is no better solution. I mean, now we have technology. It's the same problem,
Mm,
right? And
yeah.
I think you kind of touched on it with the patient journey a little bit. I want to ask you a question. Um, as a site owner, it's a selfish question, but
Yeah.
like to make my site relevant for the future. Everybody says, "Hey, you got to collect data from your patients." The future is all in the data. Like you just said, the patient journey, the patient pathway, I think is what you said.
Mm.
What does this mean? Like, if I'm a site and I want to stay relevant going forward, what kind of data do I need to collect of my patients? Because you've seen it from the vendor side, so I want to get your opinion on this.
Well, everything that you can get like can be used after that. Obviously, it's what's also possible. But the more information you have about your patients, about the struggles that you have, the lessons learned as well, the better. If we go into concrete things, if you ask me so yes, the patient pathway is neglected, but there are other things that will completely change, and that's yeah, that will completely change the industry, and that's why you don't see such a big impact on whatever we're doing at the moment, because the essence of clinical trials have to change in a way. But going back to your question about what data you could collect, electronic health records, but real electronic health records.
What do you
And
mean
when I
real?
say,
What do you mean?
I mean, like I do, if you make a comparison between electronic medical records, so there is a difference between electronic medical records and electronic health records.
Ah,
And in
explain,
my
explain.
opinion, well, in my opinion, and yeah, maybe other people have different perspectives. My opinion is that the medical record is just the medical history of the person, and the health is like also including symptoms, feelings, how people like feel about a drug that they're taking, for example. It's a lot more, let's say,
Holistic?
full as a yeah, holistic, full as a picture for the patient, basically, because it's one thing is what's your diagnose and what treatment you're at. Another thing is actually what are you concerned about, what makes you look for a different solution, for a different treatment. And it might be all sorts of things. I'm very huge fan of a methodology called design thinking. I'm not an expert there, but I've been like reading stuff around design thinking. And I remember there was one project around diabetes and patients with diabetes. And like I don't remember like whether there was a name of the company. But anyway, basically the project was about a medical device in diabetes, and they were trying to figure out why people are saying we like this device, but in the end of the day, they're not using it properly. And
Ah,
it turned out that it's not that people didn't like the medical device or it wasn't comfortable, but something in their daily schedule, in their daily routine, basically prevented them on using this device so regularly as they wanted, basically. So the moment there are some patterns in the patient's behavior, the people's behavior, in the end of the day,
I
that are
see.
super important, and that's a part of the electronic health record and not a part of the electronic medical record. And when I say again real, at the moment the United States is probably the best country for having such consolidated information around electronic health records. But still it's not like it still has a lot of potential there, because the current electronic health records are still like they still rely a lot on the billing systems
Right,
for
right.
insurance companies.
It's the only reason they
And
do it is for
exactly,
insurance.
yes.
Hmm.
And if and the
Wow.
moment this actually goes beyond like
Yeah.
this billing type of system information, then we can speak about real electronic health records.
I understand now. I appreciate it, Maya, because that's like I didn't ever think of that's a difference. I thought of the two as synonymous, but the way you explained it makes a lot of sense. But to the thing you just said, you know, the EMRs, first of all, if you go to like 90% of doctor offices, I'm not talking about research, just regular doctor, they're not collecting EHR. They're not collecting the patient reported outcomes. They're just collecting, like you said, the EMR, right? What's their diagnosis? What's the side effect? The last time they came, it's for insurance, like you said, it's for billing purposes. So for research to be relevant, and really for physicians' offices to be relevant, you're saying, and I agree with you, the more data you can collect holistically for the patient,
Yeah.
the better position you will be long term. But let's face it, a lot of these companies, most of them, are so short-sighted because they're small. They're small clinics. They don't look and see, okay, this is a potential for me to start giving just my patients like quality of life survey, or you know, based on whatever medications they're taking. I'm sure they can get some diaries or some questionnaires from the drug companies regarding the medications they have. The drug company would love that data, but just for the site to have, there's no real incentive other than this long-term, how do I stay relevant? But no, not too many people are thinking like this. I'm just giving you the
Hmm.
facts. So I think we have a
Yeah.
huge problem in the industry. Um, so I'm asking that question selfishly as somebody who owns sites that is starting to think about this kind of stuff. But thank you for explaining the difference between EHR and EMR. I really think that deserves like its own podcast, maybe even its own book. You gonna write this book, Maya?
Well, why not? One day. I'm not like a huge expert there, but I'm sure that there will be a person who can write about that. Or, like, why not me? One day. Let me tell you actually another thing that you should be thinking as a site as well.
All right.
Something that also is being very much neglected, and I think it shouldn't. When the site selection is being done, the number one thing that companies do is to go to the investigators and ask for their opinion,
Mm-hmm.
which I think it's definitely relevant. That's important. But what about the study coordinators? Like, their insights are absolutely incredible. They are actually the ones to do most of the work with patients, because you're right. The investigator is a doctor. Their job is to be as much as possible neutral, avoid emotional stuff, and think about the medical picture. And then the moment the patient reaches to the coordinator, then it comes the other part of the story. At least it should, also having support, like emotion, like someone to speak about your emotions and stuff. And they're a huge factor in everything we do, in retention, in recruitment, in like after the clinical trial, everything. So we are not really good at collecting these insights from these study coordinators. And imagine if you're a site, you receive your like a new request for proposal or a site survey, the
Right.
way they call it.
Feasibility, yeah.
And yes, exactly, feasibility questionnaires. And you actually collected information on the same indication, another clinical trial, and you have insights. What happened with these patients? Why they said no or yes? What had
Ah,
happened throughout the study? And and also warning the sponsor or the CRO, guys, we've been already seeing this movie. This is how it rolled out, and this is what we can do to actually avoid this challenge and improve the situation this way.
I see.
And that, I don't expect that will come from the investigator, though some investigators, we like, they're people in the end of the day, they're different as well. Some doctors are like more close to their patients, others are not. But the number one person who is really close to the patients in the end of the day, knowing sometimes their family, their schedule, and everything,
Yeah.
is a study coordinator.
Yeah.
So even if we leave aside the, let's say, the traditional electronic health records, because they're also a very complicated game, and you then rely on other stuff to be able to have them and to structure them in a proper way. You can at least start with the insights you're gathering, and you don't even realize you're gathering.
So, yeah, I mean, that's amazing. If you can collect this data, maybe if you're a site and you can collect this data. So if I'm like the site owner or the site director, at the end of every study, I give my coordinators a survey and say, hey, what were the challenges in enrolling patients? What was the issues with retention? If I collect enough of this over the years, I can have a good
Mhm.
data set to show sponsors at my next site selection visit. And they would be, I'm telling you, if you did this, they would be impressed. If you pull out and say, look, this is from the last 5 years. We've surveyed all of our coordinators.
Absolutely.
Most of them are gone now, but this is like our data. That's really smart. We actually have some CROs do that. And one of the sites that we know wrote a bad survey for the CRO, and the director of the CRO called and had like an hour conversation with the coordinator. And so these are things that should be done, right? The surveys.
Yeah.
The problem with this is, again, back to the short term benefits versus long term. Most companies are just short sighted, right? They're trying to just get the next 3 months of salary for their staff, get profits for the owners. They're not looking to do these kind of things, and exactly that's exactly why you want to do this if you're a site. So I think you just inspired me a little bit. I'm gonna definitely reach out to you more. This is why everybody needs to follow Maya. This is, by the way, why we need to follow other people from the industry, from other stakeholders in the industry. I'm a site owner. I do a little bit of monitoring, not a lot. But I want to interact with Maya because she understands what the sponsors are looking for when they hire her. Hey, help us get patients. Maya understands the pain points, right? And so I want to talk to more people like Maya from outside of sites, because if you talk to sites, you're going to get the same answer all the time, right? But you talk to
Yeah.
Maya, someone like Maya, you say, hey, did you know EHR is different than EMR? No, I didn't know this. What do you mean, Maya? Explain. And so now you have more insight. This is how we started the show. You need a fighter's chance. You need a puncher's chance. I'm a site. I need a puncher's chance too. What's the difference between my site here in Anaheim, California versus another one in Irvine, California? To the sponsor's eyes, we are there's nothing different. These are two sites in a very crowded market in LA, and we can only choose one. They don't see, and maybe they know my PI better, maybe they know the other PI, but if I'm equipped with this stuff Maya's been telling me, if I explain to the sponsor, did you know we also collect the HR in addition to EMR? Did you know that we survey all of our coordinator and we give you this data if you want? Now I have fighter's chance, puncher's chance. So this is good. It's all related, guys. From a sponsor side, we try to keep it as simple as possible, says Miranda Knopp. Knowing how busy study coordinators are, you need to keep the process streamlined. I agree. I think the sponsors have made tremendous improvements over the last decade that I've
Yeah,
been
I
doing
agree
this.
that like coordinators are busy and doctors are busy, and there are solutions out there. I'm not saying that they're advanced enough, maybe, but one of the challenges that we have, not just in clinical research, but overall, is how do we collect these notes that, because you said it correctly, like the doctors might type in some information that's for the billing purposes, but they actually gather more insights and they have a lot of notes as well. The problem is that these notes are in unstructured text. The same with coordinators. They
Mm,
must keep their notes. Otherwise, you can't deal with many patients, right?
right.
So you have these notes, but how can we make these notes accessible and not like making doctors and nurses and coordinators do extra work? Rather, how can we empower them additionally to do their job, and meanwhile like gathering their lessons learned and insights? That's actually the key thing, and it hasn't been really solved, but I agree that coordinators are also busy. So just providing yet another survey, I mean, I think it will do the job, and definitely long term it will pay off for them as well,
Yeah.
because they wouldn't be challenged with yet another protocol that just sucks.
And if you're the owner,
uh
if you're the
yeah.
owner or director of your site, I mean, quite honestly, like you have tremendous influence over your coordinator. You're supposed to. You're their employer, right? So if you tell them, look, This survey is important. I know you're busy, but
Hmm.
take 5 minutes and do it. This is why we're doing it. They're gonna do it. Even if they're busy, they're gonna do it. So I think site responsibility. I think you gave like really good advice actually for the sites here, which I didn't expect we are gonna go that route, but we did. When this is why we do live. We got LinkedIn user anonymous. Who are you? Maya has a nice service to digitize recruitment. I had an opportunity to explore her website some time ago.
Great.
Ah, very good. And even chat with her. Thanks, Maya. By chance, I came to LinkedIn and nice listening to you both. Thank you very much. Glad you
Thank
stumbled.
you.
You could have been anywhere in the world, but you chose to be here right now with us. LinkedIn user, targeted patient recruitment and patient recruitment efforts are crucial to every trial success. This has been my challenge since 1994. Yeah, this is a
Yeah,
multi-billion dollar
it's
problem.
yeah. And as I said, it won't be solved just by bringing incremental changes. We need something big. And when I say something big, I can't, I would say even beyond the centralized clinical trials, or let's say what we understand today, like the centralized clinical trials. We
Right.
need beyond televisits and home nursing and stuff. We maybe need to rethink how we started the whole clinical trials industry, because it all started with some regulations and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
there is like the good clinical practice like guidance,
Mm-hmm.
who, what kind of role, etc. Maybe even revisiting this and rethinking about like the roles and who how is being a part of the clinical trial. That's what we need to do.
Right. Yeah, I
Think
agree.
from scratch, actually.
I agree with you, but at the end of the day, who is we? And if we is collectively all the stakeholders, regulators, sponsors, CROs, sites, which it seems like it is, um, that doesn't happen that fast, if at all. It's too many
Yes.
stakeholder. I think they're just it's too big. I think we're gonna get more fragmented actually, which may not be a bad thing. With new rare disease, you're gonna do clinical trial. They're already doing clinical trial designed just for one patient.
Mm,
So
yeah.
I don't know. I think
Um,
there's something with the long tail too.
yes, I agree with you, but I can tell you the moment someone cracks the like the business model,
Mm-hmm.
and makes it more and goes to the pharma with a solution that, or actually pharma comes up with a solution
Mm.
that makes the clinical trial more efficient and cheaper,
Yeah,
and patient recruitment being done in time is also cheaper,
it has to get cheaper.
because
Everything has to get cheaper.
exactly,
That's deflation.
yes. So
We have
the
technology, which
moment,
is deflationary force.
yeah, the moment this happens, you'll see how quickly this will be implemented. So
I
I
agree.
agree
I
with you.
agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
So when we speak about money and efficiency, then things go in the right direction.
100% agree
So
with you. I'm just saying I don't know when we get there, if ever, in our
no,
lifetime.
I'm absolutely confident that this will happen. Maybe, I don't know. I don't want to predict, but let's say in the next 10 years,
Wow.
I think we'll have a lot different way of doing clinical trials. I already see it happening because it's already in our conversations.
Right. Right.
So, and I saw that like with the centralized clinical trials, maybe that started some like 5 years ago, before like 5 years
Right.
before COVID,
Right. Right.
and then COVID accelerated it.
Mhm.
And now bringing new solutions, tech solutions, are actually bringing more burden on the budget instead
Yeah.
of the opposite.
Right.
So now we need to shift the focus and say, okay, we need to have these solutions, so how
Yeah.
do we make it also more efficient?
Once it hits critical mass, that's when it will, the pricing,
Mm,
the costs go down, because we have deflation, and all this technology, that's a deflationary force. I mean, you see it in other industries, like iPhone, it gets cheaper every time a new one comes out, but it gets better too, right? So the price comes down, but the capabilities go up. I think with our industry, like, to be completely honest with you, because when I started 2005, and we started with a paper CRF. Like,
yeah.
I was writing, the monitor came to rip the pink one and FedEx to the sponsor. That's how they did their data management. Then like a year or two later, every single study I did, 2006, 2007, was EDC. So I think
Mm.
what we're seeing now with eSource is gonna be like that. It's gonna lead the way. I would predict by the end of this decade, so by 2029, eSource will be like EDC is now. Like it's just the norm. But I think it's gonna take like 5 to 10 years for that to happen. So I think like all this radical stuff about decentralized and all the big data, it depends on the digitization of the e-source because we have the
Mm.
EDC already. Now we got the e-source. I think that's gonna then speed the way. So maybe from 2030 to 2040, we could see some of that magic happen. But that's just my opinion. I could be very wrong. Who knows?
I hope it's earlier, but yeah, I think you're right. I'm just not sure about the timelines, but I hope it's earlier.
Yeah, well, there's many sites that hope it's later, but I don't know
Yeah.
why. I don't understand. People are hesitant to change. I remember when EDC came out, I had CRAs that would come to my site. I was just out of college, so I didn't care if it was paper. I actually saw the benefit. Why am I writing in this paper when I could just put the data in the EDC? Much easier. I had monitors tell me at that time, 2005, I'm actually worried technology's gonna take my job away. They're not going to need me to come here to monitor anymore. I'm worried. And I had monitor retire. They said, I don't want to do this. I quit after this study. I'm not doing EDC. And they retire. But you know what? Monitor, we need more monitors than ever before right now in 2020. So EDC didn't do anything with that. It's the same thing with eSource. I think sites are a little bit worried. And I think it's going to be okay.
Yeah, I'm absolutely sure about that as well. Because let's not forget that sites have the number one thing that you can't do a clinical trial without, which is patients. Like, and like fully virtual trials, yes, maybe. I mean, not maybe. They are happening now, and they will be happening even more down the road. But we are social creatures, like human beings. So we need the personal touch in one way or another. So maybe medicine will change, and I don't speak now about research only, but medicine will change how we diagnose, how we treat patients. But one thing that won't change so easily is our need for like communicating and being comforted by someone. So even if I actually was discussing exactly the same topic this weekend, and I have a post on it on LinkedIn. So even if someday that will be like many years from now, even if we have AI like that really does the job of the doctor, I mean, it wouldn't be actually doing the job of the doctor. It will just empower the doctor. And I'll give you examples from other industries, from other places. It's like the human being, like a person walking on his own, and then a person with the bike. Like that's an example that Steve Jobs actually gave many years ago. It will be always more efficient,
Mhm.
the person with the bike, than just the person just walking on his own. Then another example that was from again this book, The Range, um, uh, chess play, people playing chess, and you know that the computers are like much better than people.
Yep.
But if we combine people with computers to play together as a team against other people with computers as well, then you see that they get even better. Like these people, they forget about which were actually the next terms and like what were the variations. They focus only on strategy, and the computers they'll tell you actually all the variations out there. So you focus only on strategy, and then if you try to meet like computer against person and a computer, the person and a computer is always stronger, because the one thing that the person has is the big picture. Maybe computers will change, will like will have that one day. I don't know. I like that's a philosophical topic. I don't know, but I don't think so, and not like in the next 100 years at least.
Right.
So I think sites shouldn't be afraid of technology. They should actually accept technology as a way to empower them. Because in the end of the day, the number one thing they need to care about is how do we work with patients? How do we comfort patients at our site? And if we are efficient in that case, then people will always, sponsors and research organizations, they will always choose the site that works really well with patients because that's what they need. And that's the only thing they cannot do it on their own because of the regulations.
I agree.
They cannot meet the patients.
I think that's a motivation for the sites out there to embrace technology. And virtual trial, my opinion, virtual trial will never displace the sites. You always going to need sites. Patients trust their site, like you said. They're not going to trust pharma. They're going to trust their doctor.
Or the app or whatever. Like maybe they will use it to have a communication through
I
the app or
I
through
don't trust
something.
my phone at all. I don't trust my laptop. I don't cover the camera, but I probably should. You know, I do too
Well,
much live to cover the camera. But like I don't trust it.
yeah,
So patients no different. What are they
yeah,
going to trust a Pfizer or AstraZeneca with the news that came out today? No. No. Ashley
yeah.
Margot, Latinos in clinical research. You are we can't do this without you, Ashley. She says yes. That's all you need to say, Ashley. I don't know in what context, but I agree with you. Anything you say. Let's see. Sites that are successful are able to collect data that supports patient treatment, patient trial data,
Hmm.
and reimbursement. Great points, Maya. Agree.
Yeah.
Now let's see how sites can collect this efficiently. I mean, is it something as simple as SurveyMonkey, or um, what? Like sites are not going to build their own tech, and there's nothing off the shelf right now other than
And they
eSource,
should.
CTMS.
Oh, no, no, no. I would agree here. I think
Okay.
that there are plenty of solutions out there that are being used by other industries and are not being implemented in onto the sites. And I'll give you one example, which is a
Give me
very
one
concrete.
so I
I
can
was
use it. I'll use it.
Yes, yes, and I that's an example
If
that
it's cheap
many of the
enough, I'll
sites
use it.
can.
If
It's
it's cheap.
very cheap. I
Okay.
think it's very cheap, so
Okay.
you can all use it. And actually, sponsors should encourage sites to use
Bring it
that.
on. Bring it on.
So we were at Clubhouse last Friday or the
You're on
Friday before
Clubhouse?
with.
I never seen you on Clubhouse. We gotta get in a room
Well,
together.
I recently joined, and
Okay.
I was actually listening to the conversation that Craig Lipset and his company basically
Yeah.
what were having around sites and basically sites and virtual trials, and actually, yes, it was more about solutions that are being created at the site versus like third party solutions and how to deal with that, how to balance that. And there was a guy, I really don't remember who was the one who raised this question. He actually like explained a story some years ago when he was visiting the site. The story he said the story to kind of like motivate sponsors and CROs to be more with the sites and actually understand what they do because sometimes they don't. They don't spend a day to really see what exactly happens. So the story was more about so he was actually looking at an Excel file with all the passwords an investigator or coordinator has to use, and it was a mess, like something like 100 different passwords for all of the
Yeah.
platforms they're supposed to use. And here is this very simple solution, a tech solution. For example, at our company, we use like LastPass, which is a provider for
Right.
passwords
Right.
where you don't have to use your basically Excel file. And there are many other providers like that.
Right.
You don't need an Excel file to keep your passwords. It's an encrypted service where you actually chooses the password for you and it collects the right password according to the platform. So that's one simple and cheap solution
Right. Right. Yeah, we
for
use
you to
LastPass.
avoid. Yes. So that's what
Because that
that's
Excel file example, that's not even HIPAA compliant, really, or 21 CFR Part 11. That's you're literally putting all your passwords in a Excel file on somebody's
exactly.
computer. So yeah, LastPass for sure. But what about like if let's say I want to be a progressive site that collects patient data, or let's say I just want to survey my coordinators. I mean, for that probably SurveyMonkey. But like for the patient data, how do I like where do I even begin to store this stuff?
Well, why not using like a normal CRM system? I'm sure that
Mm.
actually, yes,
Like
like a normal
Salesforce or
CRM.
HubSpot? HubSpot?
Yes, exactly. Like both of them. Well, they have to be HIPAA compliant, but I think both of them. I don't know. Like it
I
has
think
to
they
be.
are. Yeah, I
I think
think so too.
Salesforce is HIPAA compliant,
Yeah.
but you can use like a normal CRM. The process is the same, like doing customer development, like business
Yeah.
development. It's the
Okay.
same thing. You basically like the moment you meet someone, you add some like notes to this someone, and then this gets basically
Okay.
tracked. And you can use like some keywords if you want. And yeah.
Even Dropbox, right? You have a file for each patient and put it in Dropbox.
Well, the Dropbox might be so, yes, of course, but then that will be very unstructured and hard to
Yeah.
find afterwards, you know?
Yeah.
So you should be thinking about, but yeah, why not? Like even Google Drive, and because you can
Just give
easily
them
like
something
use the,
easy to start with. You know, we got
exactly,
sites watching and they're like,
exactly.
I'm
Yeah,
overwhelmed.
but Google Drive actually should do the work because you can even
Okay.
store different files, and the search engine is so good that actually it allows you to
Mm-hmm.
look at keywords and like to search for keywords and find
Good
stuff.
point. Good point.
So there, I think there are solutions. Maybe they're not specialized. They won't tell you it's for sites,
Right.
but come on, go out of your box
But doctors are
and
afraid.
start thinking outside.
Here's the real objection. Doctors are afraid. Well, why would I put my patient data in Google? Is this even safe? And then they don't have time to look up regulations, so they just don't do it. That's what
So
happens.
that's
It's
why,
reality.
yeah,
This
exactly.
reality.
So that's why that shouldn't be done by the doctors. Like
Mm,
enough burden on doctors,
I
in
see.
my opinion. I think the situation we're in, not just in clinical research, but overall in healthcare, is because too way much more burden on doctors. We have
Okay.
expectations towards doctors that are beyond human, you know? So let's forget about doctors. Let's leave them to do their job with the patients, like being on the medical side. And we have coordinators, managers, project managers, whoever with this focus to make their life easier, and that
I
should be
got you.
across the healthcare industry.
I got you. Kevin says, I don't understand the term patient data. Isn't that a given that a site will collect patient data? Yes, but we're talking about sites going
Hmm.
above and beyond
Yeah.
to propel themselves forward to be on the right side of technology, collecting additional data for just for themselves that they can showcase to sponsors and say, look, we also collect EHRs instead of EMRs, and we also collect coordinator surveys, and we have insights there on patient recruitment, retention, why patients didn't want to do. We have data. We're becoming a data company. We understand we're still a site, but we're trying our best to become a data company and remain relevant. That's what we're talking about, Kevin. But good point. Good point. I agree. And that's exactly why we're talking about this, because most sites, I'm telling you, Maya, it's not just me. Most sites think like this. You see this comment?
And that's absolutely normal because you have
Exactly.
so many things on your shoulders. Basically,
Yep.
it's normal that you think about the delivery of the site, the safety of patients, compliance, all these stuff. So it's normal, but sometimes once in a while you have to take some time like off and think about the big picture.
I think it's the leadership of the site. The more I think about this, that needs
Yeah.
to do it. Basically, me at my site. Okay. Study coordinators can impact the study's success if they believe it is a good study. This is very true. Very true. I've had some questionable studies in the past. I was not comfortable referring patients to it.
Yeah.
Even if the doctor said, "Here's one that qualifies," I would say, "I don't know about this."
Yeah.
Many a study lags enrollment as monitors report that their coordinator site partner report no new patients screened. Yeah, it's really anyone else experienced this. You used to see this more. Now the studies are a little better, I think.
It depends, it really depends. But then, really, that's exactly what I was telling when you asked me about like my company, what we're doing.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm saying. That you can't fix patient recruitment with just awareness among patients or among PIs or whatever. You need to make sure that you did your homework with your protocol, with your strategy, that it makes sense because some protocols
This is
are just
good,
done
Maya.
in such a way that like I wouldn't refer my mom to the clinical trial, like I wouldn't do that if I have to do it. So why would I refer another person? Like
Yeah.
that makes me feel even bad. So yes, it's happening less, but still we need to work towards like better, let's say, journey for the patients.
Maya, I'm loving this conversation. I like talking to you, Maya. Let's
Same here,
continue.
Dan.
Uh, okay, Kevin, as someone who has been responsible for site feasibility questionnaires, this is a nice tip to seek responses from study
Mm,
coordinators. Exact, Kevin. What Maya just told me is like practical. I'm not even just kidding because she's on. Whether I'm gonna do it is a different story, but I like this is inspirational at least for me, for my site to be relevant in 2030. I need to start collecting data now. It's exactly right. I want to, like, we started this live stream with the fighter's chance, the puncher's chance. If I'm a smaller site and a sponsor likes another site that competes with me because they have a key opinion leader, who knows? If I have something in my back pocket to show the sponsor, well, okay, they're great, but look, this is what I've been collecting. This is exactly, I know the numbers I can get for you. Like, just from here, from my data, you have a puncher's chance. Doesn't mean you're going to get all the study. Life doesn't work this way,
yeah,
right? But you have a
definitely.
puncher's chance.
Hey,
That's all you can ask for.
mm. And if you ask me, like, yeah, data is important, but what's more important, again, I want to emphasize on that, is how you treat the patients. And no matter whether the other side has a keeping leader or not, if patients like you as an as a doctor, as a nurse, as like whoever, they will come to you in the end of the day. They
Right,
need solutions, and
right,
we don't speak about solution like please help me do my I don't know laundry. We speak about your health. Come on. So you want to go to the place where you can trust people. You
yep,
want to go to a place that really you feel that you're going to be taken care of. So if
right.
you're at this place with data or without data, if you have the patience, then
Yeah.
you will be always selected, no matter
No, no,
what.
no, of course.
You will become
100.
key opinion leader.
100% agree.
Yeah.
I'm just emphasizing the data because I rarely talk about it, but on my channel I talk a lot about all that stuff. The soft skill, plenty. We're covered with that. The people that watch, they know. But the data, I
Yeah.
don't touch on it too much because I don't know enough
Yeah.
about it. And that's why I have experts like you come on. Uh, and you're an expert, Maya. Whether you say so or not, you're an expert. You should write that book. Um, there's a saying, I don't know, it's probably from Europe, from my old Romanian folktale. In the land of the blind, he with one eye is king. Okay, so there you go, Maya. You could write the book. You could write the
Yeah.
book. Why did my name anonymous? I'm not
On
sure.
my
My name
to-do
is
list.
yeah. My name is Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu. I appreciate it. And yeah, I mean that's it, guys. Like we had a good live stream. It we can go on forever with these things. I understand why your webinar with the group I missed went seven
Yes.
hours or 24 hours. So we can do this forever, but we'll
Yeah.
definitely have you on when we're gonna talk data and when we're gonna talk patient centricity, because you actually gave, unlike what's common in this industry, is a lot of talk from ivory tower, from people who don't understand what it's like to see a patient, or what's like, I have payroll. I don't have time to invest in this because I have to pay my staff now. I need to find a study. These people who design these terms from industry, they're so disconnected. So it's refreshing to have someone come on, Maya, who actually gives practical, like tangible advice to sites. We have, if nothing else, if you're a site, you should survey your coordinators at the end of every study
Hmm.
with a few key questions, right? Like, what would the
Exactly.
questions be? Like give like 5 data point they should collect from their coordinator.
Well, things like you should be looking at how companies are doing their surveys, like looking at the opposites. Why did patients stay with the clinical trial? Why they didn't, right?
Mm,
What's the number one reason patients felt like happy about the clinical trial? The opposite as well.
mm.
Why weren't they happy about the clinical trial? Um,
I would put
so
one.
like
Why did why did the patients who didn't do the study say no? I would put that in there.
Yes, exactly. And also, what was like, was there any, let's say, common profile of the patient that said yes, actually? What was their number one reason to say yes?
I got you.
Um, yeah, things
See,
like that.
tangible stuff, guy. This is not industry nonsense from Ivory Tower. This is tangible from Maya, who's on LinkedIn and on Clubhouse. And you guys need to all go connect with her. Her links are underneath to her LinkedIn profile. She's very popular on LinkedIn. And I could see why, Maya. So thank you guys. Thank you guys for the
Thank you,
questions.
Dan,
Thank
as
you,
well.
Maya. I
Thank you,
appreciate it.
everyone.
We'll do more and catch y'all later. Bye.